point, it really is looking like the best option we have, but still, let us know if we're doing something stupid. So one CD at $250,000 will help to fund the litigation fund, the new deputy county attorney, and get us at least ready for this part of the trial that we do foresee, which is the mental health part. We had asked all departments except for public safety to cut by 5%, and that was gonna be what was used to fund those costs. So we've reversed that and said, okay, we're gonna use this $250,000 CD, but we're not going to just take it. This is a loan. So the next 3 years, and we're gonna have a contract to this effect, we will take PILT, $75,000 a year, and pay, and that'll be our priority, and that'll pay back that CD. We'll also do a 3% interest, and any penalties will come out of that 250.
Is this gonna have to be an investment rather than a loan?
Yes, well, I don't think, yeah, probably more of a loan.
Okay,
I'm just
so,
thinking with the hospital district, we had to call it an investment, not a loan, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think this one I'd feel better calling it just a loan, because that's what it
Well,
is. It's us
see, I don't
borrowing
see
from
where that-
ourselves.
again, and I don't have any of your financial records to work from, so, how does that help fund something? I mean, it's so, the treasurer goes down to the bank and says, I'm gonna take this CD and says, I'm gonna cash it. The bank says fine and puts it into the county treasurer's checking account. What does that do to the budget side of the equation? That's, unless, unless you've got some money that is not, that's totally outside of your cash report. Totally outside of your cash report. It's all the same money. It's not new money, it's not different money, it's already accounted for somewhere. So the question, again, to the treasurer is, okay, you get this money, it goes into the treasurer's checking account. What do you do to the internal bookkeeping side of things? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's still cash. Cash and investments. You get your balance sheet, you get your audit, you get your balance sheet. It's cash and investments. It's all one line. It doesn't matter whether it's in a checking account or a CD, or you've loaned it to me, or what the heck ever. It's all cash and investments. Again, unless you have some money that I don't know about that is totally outside of that. If you do, I can't believe you haven't gotten written up in an audit for it, because you're supposed to account for everything. So, is there, hypothetically, is there some money out there that the county has that's been totally set aside for something, money that's been given to you, or, I just don't know, but I can tell you with certainty, you cash the CD, it goes into the treasurer's checking account, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens on the budget side of things. It doesn't hit any cash in any fund. It's just sitting, instead of being as a CD, it's in the checking account.
So-
And Cheryl, I was talking to Cheryl about this, she said, it doesn't matter where you park it. If you park the pickup in the garage or out in the field, it's the same pickup. Seems like a pretty good analogy to me. But here again, I don't know the specifics of your financials, and because it looks to me that like that $250,000 is the reserves, it's the cash balance, it's made up of the cash balance of all of these various funds.
Can we borrow from the cash balance with a plan to pay it back?
It,
It still doesn't make sense.
no, there isn't any accounting.
So our issue is then,
I mean, if you're gonna use PILT to pay for this, yeah, you can use PILT. You better hope Congress reauthorizes, because right now, I'm telling counties, you cannot legitimately anticipate a penny of PILT. There is no PILT authority in federal law. And unless Congress passes something that authorizes PILT to be paid, there will be no future PILT payments. Now, none of us can conceive that that would ever happen, that they won't pass something. But when you've got a $480 million funding level last fiscal year, and the president's budget is coming at 360, okay, it don't take much to do that math. But you've got another complication in there, is that the money that the counties receive for SRS, Title I and Title III, is considered a prior year payment. And so for the federal government, for the PILT formula, if you're on the B side of the formula, that's subtracted from your PILT payment. Well, that amount that's been being consistently subtracted is all of a sudden becomes minuscule because SRS lapsed and we're back at the 25% payment, so you've got 8 or 9% of that revenue. That goes over and it enters into the nationwide PILT formula. And so counties who lost SRS will see PILT go up somewhat to backfill, but it's all dependent upon what level Congress ultimately decides to fund it. And if it's not fully funded, which our calculations is gonna take somewhat north of $600 million, they're gonna have to prorate it. So at the end of the day, if Congress does not reauthorize SRS, your SRS money is gonna be permanently reduced. That is going to affect the nationwide PILT formula along with the administration's recommendation for funding level. If PILT is reauthorized, it's not gonna be at the same dollar amount that you're getting. But I told the clerks last week, I said, you legitimately cannot anticipate any revenue for PILT in this budget year because there's no law to authorize it. Well, what are you gonna do if you're Lewis and Clark County and 23% of your general fund is PILT? You got a problem.
So the other day, to get these numbers, what I heard on Monday was that we have a Canyon Ferry Trust, which is wrong with that, but that's about $3 million. We have $1.5 million in PILT. We have $4 million in bonds and $5.5 million in CDs. So are we holding some of these in excess of what our reserve?
Okay, so the Canyon Ferry Trust, I know that comes with strings. I don't know what they are, but I know enough about it to know that it has restrictions on its use. PILT is discretionary, and it can be, as long as it has to be used for a public purpose. Okay, well, anything a county does is a public purpose, so there isn't any question about that. As to the bonds and the investments, I just don't know what they are. I don't know, and when I get back, it'll be next week, but I will go look at your audits and your balance sheet and see what, because there's a hole missing in, for me. There's something missing in here that you have that much cash and you have a budget of this amount. There's funds that have to be, they're either due to somebody else, they're being held for someone else. And so you could look at the cash report and see how much is in the 7,000 funds that would indicate. There's something's missing,
Okay.
but I just don't know.
The way it was explained to me by a former treasurer was the commissioners, when she was treasurer, had asked her to set aside 3 years' worth of the budget in case there was some kind of a shortfall in the county, and that's what those bonds and CDs were, was this money set aside. This, as far as I know, they weren't set aside for the 700 funds or anything like that. They were set aside in case something catastrophic happened and the county needed that money.
I mean, there's capital, quite often counties put money into capital funds, capital reserve funds, because there isn't any limitation on those. Other than the expenditure has to be for something that has a useful life of over 5 years and costs over $5,000. And I don't think anybody's gonna write you up in an audit if you move money out of a capital reserve, but that still should be part of that cash report. And without seeing the full cash report, if a county has money that's not accounted for any place, that's a really bad thing. That you shouldn't have that. It has to be accounted for somewhere. I'm not gonna criticize anybody for having that philosophy of wanting to save for a rainy day. And there's ways that you can legitimately do it. But you don't just, it doesn't just disappear off the books. It somehow has to be accounted for. I don't know what what might be the case. But your question, Laura, is about doing sure, you can do an interfund loan. And that's done quite often between funds. It's just an internal loan. But, you know, if you're making a commitment that you're gonna, the commission, at least two of you, makes a commitment that you're gonna commit X amount of PIL for the next X number of years to provide assistance for funding this special circumstance. You put that in the budget, or you put that in the minutes, and yeah, you can execute a document. But I would hope if I was sitting on that side of the table and I told somebody that's what I would do, that's what's gonna happen. Because that's in essence what you're doing. You're agreeing to commit X amount of your PIL money for a certain period of time to do this.
To avoid cuts, to avoid layoffs,
For whatever purpose. Yeah.
right?
I mean, PIL's discretionary, you spend it however you want to.
But Harold, excuse me, what I'm getting though is all this money that's in bonds, CDs that the county's got, that's all cash reserve, buddy.
It should be, unless there's something
Yeah.
I just don't know
Well,
about.
that's just what I'm wondering, so,
Yeah.
that's what I got.
But it exceeds the 33% that,
And the 33% is levy funds. It's property tax levy funds. So it doesn't apply to non-levy funds. Solid waste is an enterprise fund. There's lots of non-levy. PIL, you can have whatever you want in PILs. You can, so it's just your general property tax levy funds that has that restriction.
And only if it's listed as cash reserves. If you put it into capital, then there's no limit.
Yeah. So, I was a school board member at Rapelje, and there was a huge protested tax case that ultimately got settled, and we got a bunch of cash. Well, so what we did is we put another line in the budget, and because our limitation, I don't remember what it was, I think it was maybe 20% at the time for schools, but we just put more money in the budget side of things, knowing we weren't gonna spend it. But, you know, that's the shell game that you can do to keep more money in a fund without exceeding the limitation on the reserves. You just increase the budget authority, but, you know, with the commitment and the knowledge that you're not gonna spend it.
So, Harold, is this money that we have in these CDs and these bonds, is that illegal? Not illegal drug money, but it's just, it's basically.
Inappropriate.
It's basically an excess fund that was set up that we don't really,
I just don't know, I just don't know what it is without a cash report, to be able to see and audit or balance sheet. It has to be someplace, it has to be accounted for someplace. The question in my mind is, okay, if you've got money that's not identified as reserves in these funds, it's either, it's restricted for some particular use, it's somewhere in that entire cash report, or it's money that belongs to somebody else. I just don't know. I don't have enough information to work with.
Seems to me it's just like a saving, it's sitting there like a savings account,
You know?
what it seems to me like.
I don't know. So without that cash report, I mean, I'd be more than happy to look at a cash report. If you send me one, and actually got my curiosity now.
Could you,
Yeah, the numbers
our
do match like
curiosity
you said they
too.
would.
could you, and would you do it?
Oh, sure. It's gonna be next week, though. I'm gonna go hide out over where I grew up for the rest of the week as soon as I get home.
I'll save you time on the audit, because I looked at that, and it wasn't an audit finding.
Okay. Well, of course, if they didn't know about it, they would.
They would look at it, no, they would look at that, they would.
You would think.
They look at a
They would
balance
get
sheet.
everything. Yeah, it's, somewhere it's gotta be accounted for. And I just don't know. I just simply don't know. If you had said, we've got a $4 million budget, and we've got $3 million, okay, that wouldn't have, okay, that makes sense, but $9 million, that's what's troubling me. I know some of it's gotta be due to, some of it's gotta be somebody else's.
My question last year during the budget was, Doug presented a document of what expenditures or whatever we were looking at. It was like 4.7 something million, but then it said that there was an expected revenue of like 7.1 million. I'm like, so where's that 3 million? And everything. What do we do with that extra money? So if we know our expenses are 4.7 and we expect 7.1 million, where's the other money? Where's it go? What are we doing with it? And I can never get an answer. I still don't have that answer, but I can never understand if we're getting this much, we should, that's gotta be going somewhere. And I don't understand everything that has to be done either. I'm just looking at that one component, so.
Do you know if that included like an anticipated bill or anything?
I have no idea. I thought that was just the expected tax revenue that was coming in, but.
Nah, it can't be tax revenue, that's way more than what your tax
But
base.
what was that one? Remember we had it, you know what I'm talking about, Doug? You can't remember that far back. It was last week, Doug. No, just kidding.
Okay, well, I thought maybe I could go online really quick and look at your documents filed with the Local Government Services Bureau, but Verizon hasn't got enough signal to push down here.
Oh, yeah, down here.
You can open the window.
Isn't technology wonderful, but
The elevator has the best. In the elevator.
Does it?
Yeah,
Best reception? You're kidding.
That's why you hang out there.
that's right.
But she's always in there.
Yeah,
You gotta go, is that
Is that
right?
weird? You were
It's
just
10:30.
yeah.
You have to go?
I'll stay until you're done, interrogating me. I'd be more than happy to, but I don't know that I can help you a whole lot more. I've tried to give you a little basic understanding of where the money's at, but, you definitely threw a wrinkle my way that I just don't have enough information to understand it. But I think,
Neither do I, Carol. That's why you're here.
I think,
So-
I assume there's a bunch that's school money. I would guess that.
Well, and it seems like, and I guess my concern, looking at the overall picture, is trying to plan for tomorrow. I don't wanna worry about today, because I can't control that, but tomorrow and down the road. But the state entitlement was on the chopping block, I think, in legislation.
Yeah.
And, well, damn near everything that had a fiscal note to it was on the chopping block of legislation. You know, we saw increases which we worked out with MACO, with the SRS. But, you know, it seems like a lot of that stuff that the state was taking care of is now falling back on the counties to take care of it. But I guess
I was doing pretty good, I hadn't thought about the legislature today.
It never
It
loses.
wasn't, it wasn't a pleasant experience.
No, it wasn't, but but here, you know, like I said, is that, you know, I always talk about my budget as like a glass of water. You pour it on the table, it's gonna go in every direction, I can't control any movement of it, really. Some of it I can, some of it I can't, but, I surely help can't control what people do on the outside of the wall, but changes things as well, so. I guess I was looking for a solid answer to save the world, but.
You mentioned school money, so there's school money that comes in, that there's somewhere, there's the city's money that comes in there somehow. How is that reflected?
Generally, the city's money it goes into a 7,000 fund and then it's actually transferred to the city, and the city has their own bank account and handles their own investments.
Same thing with school?
Schools can do that, but I'll still say, I'm pretty sure the majority of the schools' cases, their money is with the county treasurer. It's just kept there. It's easier for them they don't have to keep tracking the investments, they don't actually have to manage the investments. So I'm guessing, I can't say that I know, but I'm guessing that's a big chunk of the cash that you have is school's money. I also know that you collect money that is like 3/4 fire that's transferred to Gallatin County. So, you know, that's money that's gonna be in that due to account that once a month or whatever period is transferred out. You've got a number of those different situations. You collect money on behalf of the state, the 101 statewide mills. That is to be transferred within 20 days of the end of the month to the state treasury, done on this county collections report that used to be this long, and now it's because there's 100 and however many specialty license plates. So there's a lot of money that flows through the county treasurers that is really not the county's money.
As far as schools, all I know that we have in our investments, there's two $100,000 CDs that belong to the school.
And the rest is basically just in fact, intermingled in the cash, the total cash balance.
So in other words, kind of on hold until you could,
Well, I don't know that I guess in some respects, if in fact you have some money that is invested that is not part of your cash flow needs, your reserves, is not money that belongs to somebody else, is not money that has certain restrictions on its expenditures. With all of those caveats, if you have additional cash that doesn't have any of those restrictions, then yes, I'm going to assume those caveats, it could be used to fund this extraordinary situation that you're facing. But I just don't, it's somewhere, it's got to show up on a cash report. It just simply has to. And I don't know what restrictions, limitations there may be on really any of the dollars other than which, the ones we've already discussed.
But to Franklin's point, we're on hold. We got our valuations the 1st of August. We have to adopt the budget next
You do.
week.
You do.
We can't be on hold.
Well,
So we're gonna have to proceed in a way that we think is prudent and then react when we get
And
perhaps more
you can amend
information.
your budget 2 weeks later. Isn't it?
Right.
Well, maybe 3 weeks to allow time for advertising, but, I mean, you can amend your budget.
Right.
Um,
We can't just put everything on hold. I think at this point, that would be unfair to our accounting and treasury staff.
you know, you,
But we're still gonna need this information, I assume.
well, see, and you, internally, you should be able to do that. You wouldn't, I mean, I'm just a different set of eyes. I'm certainly not, I'm not in any position to say what this is. What we're in a position to do is look and ask questions. I mean, you should internally be able to figure out what you've got. I would hope you do.
We can all look at it, I mean, right, it's just, we can all look at it.
I think if the suggestion box is open, I think getting everybody that's involved in the conversation a copy of the June 30th cash report, and your system should have a balance sheet done, because from that cash report, you've got obligations that, you've got warrants that have been written that haven't been redeemed yet, so you've got, it's not gonna be a true fund balance. I'm trying to think about how the software works. If you run the June 30th cash report as of today, by now it should have, there should be very few warrants outstanding for the June 30th period. So it should be a pretty close reflection. Then you can see what they are. Just know 7,000 funds you can't touch. And then you just have to look and see where money is in other funds and determine whether it's part of the cash flow operations of the levy funds, or if it's committed for something else. Those are, yeah, that's the kind of review I'm gonna do. Frankly, is I'm gonna look and I'll ask questions more than I'll give answers, honestly. But if we can help identify questions that should be asked, and maybe something was done so many years ago, there isn't anybody left around that even knows what it is. It's just there.
We can still figure out kind of more where we're at by looking at these reports and doing some cross-checking. And if we put all our
should
heads together.
certainly, yeah, you certainly should be able to. And I will say, working with Debbie, I have a very high level of comfort that she has your property tax limitation calculated correctly. So, I think we're probably at about over 15 or so counties that have asked and that we've looked at. So far, I've gotten one that's been 100% right the first time. It wasn't you, but I'm not gonna say who it was either. Kind of an unlikely place.
It was disappointing to lose those mills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain how that happened so that everybody knows too? I know we're not alone.
So, what happened over the course of time is what the law has always said is, as far as the limitation, or always since 2001, you're authorized to levy the amount you levied last year, plus this modest amount of growth that changes every year because it's a formula. And then you can levy whatever the number of mills calculates out to that against the new property. And so that's truly where your revenue growth comes from. It comes from that modest amount of allowed growth, but it also comes from new property that's going on the tax rolls, and that's identified by the Department of Revenue. So your increase due to reappraisal does not generate you a penny of new money, because your mills, if that's all there was, and the reappraisal just increased the taxable value with no new property, your mills go down to meet what you can authorize, what you can levy. You can levy the same amount you did last year. So, In 2001, a provision was put into the law that allowed commissioners to carry forward mills that were not utilized from one year to the next. So if you were authorized to levy 100 mills, you only levied 95, you were authorized to carry the 5 mills forward. And unfortunately, a form in the budget documents by the Department of Administration was not changed to reflect a change in the law. And so over on the right-hand column, it had for each year, you kept this thing of how much you were authorized and how much you actually levied in any mill carry forward authority that was left over. And that's fine. And the way you were in the past, what you were told was instructed to do at the beginning of the calculation, you started with the amount that you were authorized the prior year and in dollars, and that picked up that carry forward, but it was picking it up in dollars, and the law says mills. So we worked with the Department of Administration, the league, others, and totally revised that form so that it now is reflecting what the law actually says, and doing it right. But that earlier form on page 9 of the budget document, it had a total cell down there. And so if a county chose to not levy 5 mills this year, 5 mills next year, they thought they had 10 mills, when in fact they had 5 because the first 5 was already being accounted for in the beginning of the calculation for the current year. So, and I don't remember, Eric and I were just looking at those this morning, it didn't happen to look at Broadwater's, but if a county has levied the maximum, it doesn't make any difference. It was only in the case of a county that didn't levy the maximum that there's been some misunderstanding about how much we're allowed to carry forward. And some people just had trouble filling the forms out too in some counties that thought they had hundreds of mills of carry forward authority. But unfortunately, there were counties that over levied last year also.
That would hurt.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think Debbie does a good job. I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
I concur.
And I would a whole lot rather counties send us their stuff. So most of the time, it's just simply a case of new eyes, different eyes looking at something. One that does cause counties a lot of problem is net and gross proceeds taxes. For hard rock mining, for gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and all of those things. When Eric fielded a call from Dawson County and they've got a number in there for net and gross proceeds, I told them, no, can't be. There aren't any gold mines down there. It just simply can't be. There cannot be a number. So you go and look at their certified sheet from last year and the current year from Department of Revenue. No, there's no gross proceeds taxable value. So the question, well, why did you put something in the form for the amount levied last year? You didn't. So like I say, most of it's just simply a new set of eyes looking at those forms and having the opportunity to look at a lot of different counties so you kind of know where to look for things. And quite often transposed numbers, just all kinds of little human errors that happen, that we all do.
Sure, yes. I
Okay,
appreciate
well,
this.
if
Thank you.
you can, more than happy to look at cash report. I'll ask more questions than I give answers, I can assure you of that. But maybe if I can identify places that you should look, and Eric's gonna be around the rest of the week, so, you know, I can send it to him. I mean, he can, every bit as, you know, skilled or, you know, the same things. I mean, he'll ask the same questions I would.
I think it'd be wise for us to go through it, see what we can find, and then send it to you guys for some double checks and another set of eyes, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
So
then-
we still know what we're doing?
Not yet.
Okay. The money that you've got in the bank, all of your investments, darn sure should equal your cash report. That's just a fundamental thing. The treasurer and the clerk and recorder are supposed to reconcile those two documents. When you've got a single officer there, it's a little easier, but the clerk and recorder and treasurer are supposed to reconcile. The treasurer has the investments and has that cash portion of it, where the clerk and recorder has the accounting side of it. And those two are supposed to reconcile those two things every month. And of course, a preliminary to that is reconciling with the bank and with wherever your investments are held. And that's done ahead of that other, but it's fundamental accounting. And it's one thing most people don't make the distinction and don't realize. Think of the clerk and recorder as your accountant. The clerk and recorder is responsible for keeping the county's books. The treasurer is the county's banker, is responsible for the cash. And in the old days, I mean really old days, before we had a Federal Reserve System, before we had banks, so I did something for the county. I sold the county some widgets. The clerk and recorder issued a warrant, which is a promissory note. It's not a check, it's a promissory note. And it warrants that on demand it'll be paid. So I would take that warrant after it had been approved by the commission and co-signed by the commission and the clerk and recorder. I'd pack it to the treasurer's office and I'd say, here, give me my money. And the treasurer literally would then distribute the cash to that person that had made that claim. And that, if there wasn't cash available in that fund, and this is still true today, if there isn't cash available, then the warrant would be registered. And so with today's, and which is, you start paying interest on that. And at some point when there's enough money in that fund to actually redeem that warrant, then the treasurer will issue the cash, issue the money and pay it. Well, with the Federal Reserve System today, we all tend to think of and look at warrants as being checks, when in fact they're not. If they were checks, the bank would issue a bank statement that had every warrant listed on it. What happens is those warrants flow through the Federal Reserve System, they show up at the bank calls up the treasurer and says, I got $147,226 worth of warrants. The treasurer says, fine. The treasurer takes a county treasurer's check down and writes the check out to the bank to redeem those warrants. Takes the warrants, brings them up, sits down in the treasurer's office and goes through and marks them in the county's accounting system as being redeemed. So, you know, that's how the world really works. And in the, when we first started, well then, banks started getting involved with that. So you issue me a warrant, but I live in Three Forks, and I don't want to keep coming back up here to try to redeem my warrant. So I could deposit it at my bank, cash it. My bank in Three Forks would come up here. The bank here would tell the treasurer that it was here, and if there wasn't money in there, then the bank just held it, but started charging interest on that. And then as the banking industry grew and and we had the Federal Reserve, it's actually a pretty interesting story of how all of that evolved. But somebody that doesn't really understand public banking, why are these called warrants? It's, I'm warranting, the county is issuing a warrant, a promise that they're gonna pay it. Where a check is a demand note, but the checks don't go through your bank account. The warrants don't go through your bank account. They're just a lump sum that the treasurer redeems. So anyway,
So it's not like the private checkbook, is it?
no, it's not. No, it's not. It's a promissory note. And the warrant never expires. You can cancel warrants. But let's say I've been wandering around with a warrant in my pocket for 15 years and I show up in the doorstep, you still have to honor it.
Oh.
Never expires. You can void it out of your books, but I show up with it, you're still gonna have to pay it.
That's interesting, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
And that's where one of the big things is jurors. You know, jurors get this paltry piddly little bit for, you know, doing jury service. And a lot of people think, they throw it away and say, hey, I'll make my little token contribution to the county, am I gonna cash this? And they're the ones that are quite often being canceled. And so when they're canceled, they do go out of the books, they do go out of, but somebody shows up with it, you're still gonna have to honor it. Actually having conversations right now about the Department of Administration about warrants. Okay, well, I need to get back.
Thank you very
So,
much. We've
thank
got a
you.
lot of work to do, but
I-
it really
I-
helps to have this.
You have my sympathies, that's all I can say, is I know you have some challenging times in front of you, and things to work your way through, but I'm confident you'll figure it out.
We will.
Okay.
Might not be pretty, but we'll figure it out.
All righty,
Yeah.
well, take care of all.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
Elected officials don't leave yet.
Thanks again.
All righty, take care all.
Take care.
We'll see ya.
Take care.
Howdy, howdy.
So, when I see it, is we have two tasks to do today. One is we need to go through these and figure out where we're at. Is our plan yesterday feasible? Would it work? It's not gonna solve our problems. And, or do we go back to everybody's getting 5% for this? And the second thing we do is meet with elected officials. Again, like we talked and figure out how we're gonna move ahead as a team, or we're gonna go ahead and fracture ourselves so that everybody gets, you know, line. That's correct. It's more complicated than that. I think soon will be important, but a lot of these are in 7 to 10 little CDs. So they have to mature, so they can be cashed out. That's what Doug has a STIP account, which is short-term investment pool. That's what's used to pay those bills that come in. Some of them unforeseen, some of them expected. Over time, just an example, kind of expected, we don't know how much, so STIP covers those shortfalls. So STIP is what keeps this rocket rolling through here. The long term is still here. That's where it kind of makes sense that we could take a long term, convert it to a short term, as long as we put it back to the long term. We are allowed, it is legal. It is not wise to do beyond a one-time shot. This is a one-time deal. If we do it, period, everybody's gonna have to figure out how to balance the budgets to whatever they have to. If it means they off next year, it's up to them. Gotta start doing if they went out for a million, we could take a million CDs and know that that mill levy was gonna pay those back. Because the STIP, we won't touch the STIP, we touch the bonds. But that becomes more like the hospital loan, it's just a different investment. What we're planning on is shifting. That's what is slippery, and that's what needs to make us all nervous and give us pause if we continue. But it might still be the only option we have, unless we want to look at laying off across the board. to every department. Or getting rid of those departments that aren't qualified. And then what we're doing is we're attracting those people who don't want out of the
Yeah.
community but take from it. Because people who have our community
they're asking-
were qualified like this. So there's a really big picture we need to understand and have a grasp on. So my question is, do you guys want to sit with Debbie and Doug and kind of go through this and figure out a game plan first? Or do you want to meet with our elected officials on that game plan since they're here? Neither, both are separate of the other. What do you guys think?
Probably should start with Doug and Debbie, I suppose.
And maybe we could check with our fellow elected officials and see what their schedules
I
look
would
like
think we would
today.
need, we have these guys here, let's go through with that elected official thing, and with the understanding that we're gonna sit down with Doug and Debbie and go exactly through what we do actually have here.
So, to you two, you guys should stay for this for sure, but, could you get us cash reports, like Harold was saying, with the, June 30 cash report as of today, and the CD report when we're done here, so that we have that to go through line by line and kind of see where there's extra reserves or not, where we're lacking too,
Well, that's where, like you was saying, it would have to filter out the 4,000s, those are our CIPs.
right?
Enterprise, which is solid waste, and silos, which are at 5,000. And then the 7,000s are all the in and out we're holding.
Right,
So it would just really be the 1,000 and 2,000 funds, because we don't have any 3,000.
yeah. So when we're done here, maybe we could start with that and
Sounds
y'all
like
sit
maybe
down
2
around the
pages.
table with the eyes on the same information.
So do you have an investment report that has all investments, CDs, bonds?
I have a report I send to the drainage commissioner every month that has all of the investments on it.
Okay. Could I get a copy of that and the cash report too?
And if you wanna
See,
sit here with us and go through it,
That
that
actually
would be
is
good.
my
I'm-
cash report.
I'm
What's
pretty
that?
stacked
That
up for
actually
the rest
is
of the
my
day.
cash report, the report that I send to you with all the investments, got all that, right.
Yeah,
And
And these
that,
do balance with
that
cash.
won't change from June. June is still gonna look like I sent it to you in June.
okay, all right,
So the
cool.
only thing that's changed would be, I just finished balancing July yesterday. So July would have the investments, the CDs that were cashed, taken out of the investment side of that. However, they're still in the bank account side, and
So we have
Yeah.
already the 6:30 cash report and your CD report. That's all we need, right? They balance, we could just go through line by line, 1,000s and 2,000s and see where we're at from this, right?
the only
People
thing I
used
could
to.
think of is I could let you know what the amount of collections were that I sent out.
Okay,
Because those are, the collections I did for June won't come out until August. That's when I write my checks. So, for the July report that, I'll send to you today would have the collections from June taken out.
okay. All right, we should be able to at least get some answers and maybe a broader understanding of that side of
But
things.
as far as what those CDs are for, we're still in the dark about that. And what my understanding was, is it was just money the county was saving for a rainy day in case, you know, God forbid, the mill closed or the lime plant or whatever, and we lost a third of our tax base. We would have something to fall back on until we could regroup.
But each of these, you can see when they were originally invested, can't you?
Pardon me?
These CDs and bonds, you can see when they were each originally invested, can't you?
Mhm. But that's not gonna say what it was for.
That'll give us an idea of what's going on, possibly.
All All right, so I'm gonna hand it over to you guys to go ahead and start the conversation.
I would still like to do it like we proposed, is try not to mess with anybody's budget this year. Knowing that next year, we're probably gonna, you know, depending on how things turn out here, we may need to make cuts in everybody's things. And I still think that Wynn's idea of that, of cashing in that, one of those CDs to cover the immediate costs that we're gonna have here within the next year, to fund Corey's extra help and to fund whatever we have to do through litigation. And then I think that the other part of that is that the hospital mill levy is, I believe the last payments are due in that in November. I would request that that the sheriff's department and the county attorney propose a mill levy that everybody here supports. And I think the best thing to do would be to define an amount and just make that mill levy for 3 years. Because the sheriff's department, we're gonna run into the way things are going, this sheriff's department is gonna continue to be taxed under the budget the way we are right now, no matter what happens with this case. So I think if we run that mill levy for 3 years, we can find out where we're gonna be at. Hopefully this case would be over in 2 years. That third year would be basically a year to see just exactly where we're headed to. And at that point, I would think we would either try to go to the citizens and have that be a 3-year mill, or we make some kind of a commitment for that money, as much as I hate to come out of PILT. Because I don't think that PILT is, I'd rather not run the budget with PILT, because we don't know who's gonna give us what or when they're gonna give it to us.
Well, and I have, back to our prior conversation in June, I think, is I'm still trying to find that, that company to do that survey. Because we talked about the public safety bill. So, but I wanna do that survey to see what the citizens want, expect, and are willing to pay for. Because I don't think there's enough communication between myself and the citizens to say I have a very firm idea of what they're expecting. So that's where that survey comes in. Because if I just put a generalized mill out there without some sort of understanding what they're looking for, what they expect, I think I'm wasting everybody's time, including my own. So I'm still trying to get those guys lined out, try to figure out which one. There's a couple of them out there, so figure out which one I think is gonna work best and see what the cost is gonna be to get that done. Because that was the conversation we had, I believe, in June on that. So it's not, someone's gotta give. I mean, that's just all there is to it. We gotta, unfortunately, everybody's getting taxed a little bit harder in everything with the growth that's going on and what's happening. But it's very apparent to us right now that, heaven forbid this fatal crash doesn't come into something more than what it is right now. We won't know about that for 6 to 10 weeks when the toxicology report comes back. So that might add another, there's a possibility that could add another homicide case to Corey's caseload from something as simple as that. So, I'm like I was trying to explain to Harold, I do look at towards tomorrow what we're gonna do and how we're gonna get there. And obviously the other discussion we had this morning was, obviously the issues, and I brought it up during a meeting here a couple weeks ago, about an ability to have something in that Three Forks area, because of that original conversation with Steve Kavanaugh back in the day when the commissioners before all of you sat here, decided to approve that whole community development program down there that had infrastructure set and designed into it. Now we don't have it. So now we're falling behind the 8 ball because there's no, when Kavanaugh's plan went to the wayside, so did everything that went with it. But all those lots and those houses are still starting to flow in there. And we don't have the infrastructure down there to deal with what's going on. I mean, there's a couple fire ponds out there and that's about it, but, that's your fire suppression efforts, is a couple little holding ponds in a housing area. So, and obviously there's no law enforcement presence there right now at all. So, and that's where the undersheriff was at, instead of being here for the meeting, was down at Three Forks, taking a call again this morning. So, there's things we have to look at down the road there, and kind of why I asked Harold, what can we do? I mean, how do we get to that point? I mean, I'm not one to say taxes need to be raised, because I don't want mine to go up any more than they already have this year, but I think we're missing a lot of infrastructure throughout our county that needs to happen, and there's houses getting built left and right. And I know this little subdivision down here on I Street, I think almost every one of those lots is sold now. And the one guy bought, I think he bought 10 of them. So, people are wanting to put houses in fairly quickly, and houses cost people, and people want services. So, you know, I can tell you in my 17 years, the communication between the commission and the other electeds and what's going on is a lot better now than it has been in the past. But I don't think anybody ever, I think people talk about growth but never planned for it. So, it's just my opinion.
Well, I would think that conversation that me and you had earlier with Kavanaugh subdivision down there, there's supposed to be a certain amount of money from each one of them lots coming to the county, and where's that money going? Are we getting that money, or?
Do you know? Is any of it coming in?
There are certain lots down there that have liens against them, and when they're paid off, the money comes into the county. I'm not sure what fund it goes into. Do you know that, Doug?
It goes, if it's designated to go into the Wheatland Road Fund, that's where it goes. If it's designated fire, it goes into fire. That's what most of that money was designated either for fire or road development.
Well, I'm glad, I hope it's coming in. 'Cause
When it comes in, it goes into those amounts. I haven't seen a great deal of it coming in.
Cause I know there was 40 lots of.
And there aren't that many lots left to be sold, but.
But I sold those.
But that lien has to be removed before they can sell it, so,
As I said, that's
yeah.
the whole, there's these liens on the last of it.
Because I sold 40 lots one day, and every one of them had a $1,500 and some odd dollar lien against it. And the bank took them back, but they said when they sold the lot, they'd pay. I don't know, I just, you know, in our conversation, I didn't know if it was being paid.
Right,
So.
they are.
Okay.
Those liens aren't really the holdup, they're actually the protection for the county. Like Ann said, they can't be sold without paying that to the
Well,
county
yeah, I know
first.
there's still holds everything up.
Well, I guess
It actually doesn't, it's a pretty quick process.
I would kind of, just we started off on, I think, and this is something that Wayne and I were planning on doing, is spend a little more time exploring this idea. But for me, I think there's still an open question whether we would do a short-term mill specifically for this, or whether it would make more sense to do a permanent mill. And part of that question is just what we anticipate as the long-term needs. And long-term needs, I mean, the things we know right now are what the sheriff just said, a patrol deputy in the south, and we need somebody that we can dedicate to drugs, to drug investigations and interdiction and everything goes into that. And there's no way we're gonna make headway without a lot of time and effort committed to that effort, more than we can right now with the way the force is stretched. As far as my office goes, I mean, I would invite all of you guys to come to court and feel free to talk to me about whatever you want to as far as workload, but there's no way to work, I mean, we're working some things now that are turning out, but to work the kind of investigations that are needed for the stuff that's going on in this whole county takes a significant amount of manpower commitment to that. And my long-term goal is that we really start making some strides in taking out some of these groups. And so what does that look like? It's a commitment, if it's a multi-year commitment. Well, I guess I need to understand what are your long-term views of the budget for the county? What are